What do you get when the deadliest army the world has ever seen meets the greatest trade networks in history? You get the Mongols, conquerors who terrified the world, but also builders who connected it. In the 13th century, nomadic horsemen from the steppes of Mongolia rode faster than armies could chase, reshaping continents in their wake. Cities burned, empires fell, and millions vanished. Yet, while fear spread like wildfire, the Mongols also absorbed knowledge, protected trade, and connected East and West like no empire before them. So, were they the ultimate destroyers? Or the most unlikely architects of a connected world? Let's find out. When the Mongols appeared in the early 13th century, no one could have predicted the scale of what was coming. Nomadic tribes from the harsh, windswept steppes of Mongolia, under the leadership of a man named Genghis Khan, transformed into a war machine capable of reshaping the world. These weren't just warriors on horseback. They were highly disciplined, organized, and ruthless strategists. Their cavalry could cover over 100 kilometers in a single day, using complex communication systems with flags, horns, and messengers. They could surround and outmaneuver armies much larger than their own, often before the enemy even knew what hit them. Cities didn't just fall, they vanished. Nishapur in Persia reportedly lost hundreds of thousands in a single day. Merv, once a thriving hub of trade and knowledge, was obliterated. So much so that some historians called it the mother of all cities lost. Baghdad, with its famed House of Wisdom, saw countless manuscripts burned, erasing centuries of accumulated knowledge in a matter of hours. Even smaller towns weren't spared. Entire villages were depopulated, forests and farmland abandoned, creating a vast emptiness across the Eurasian plains. But the Mongols weren't just about wanton destruction. Their violence was deliberate and strategic. Fear itself was a weapon. By spreading terror, they could force entire kingdoms to surrender without a fight, saving time and resources. Yet, paradoxically, they often spared people who could contribute to the empire. Craftsmen, engineers, doctors, and scholars were taken, relocated, and integrated into the Mongol system. They were also master learners. Siege techniques were borrowed from Chinese engineers. Administrative systems came from Persians. Trade and diplomatic knowledge was gathered from merchants along the Silk Road. Every conquest wasn't just about land. It was about absorbing knowledge, skills, and resources to make the empire stronger. So here's the question. Were the Mongols purely ruthless conquerors, or brilliant strategists who understood that knowledge and fear were equally powerful tools? Could someone responsible for so much death also be laying the foundation for a global empire? And one more thought. When we see the scale of the devastation, it's easy to label them as monsters. But if they had not acted this way, would the world have remained divided for centuries longer? Can destruction sometimes be a precursor to connection? After the storms of conquest settled, something unexpected began to emerge from the chaos the Mongols had created. For the first time in history, nearly all of Eurasia, from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, was under one vast empire. The same riders who once burned cities now patrolled the roads to protect them. The Mongols reopened and secured the Silk Road, the ancient trade network that had long connected East and West. Under their rule, merchants, travelers, and diplomats could cross thousands of miles with an almost unheard-of level of safety. A merchant leaving China could ride all the way to Persia or even Venice under the same imperial protection. It was during this era that silk, porcelain, and spices flowed westward, while gold, glass, and art moved east. But it wasn't just goods, it was knowledge, beliefs, and ideas. The Mongols allowed freedom of religion across their empire, hosting Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, and Confucians under one banner. Imagine that. In an age defined by war and division, the Mongols enforced tolerance, not uniformity. And then there were the travelers. Men like Marco Polo, who journeyed from Venice to the Mongol court in China. His tales introduced Europe to gunpowder, paper money, and the wonders of the East. Some historians argue that this cross-cultural exchange laid the groundwork for the Renaissance centuries later. But the Mongol networks also carried darker passengers. The bubonic plague. The same roads that carried silk and knowledge may have carried the Black Death westward, killing tens of millions. The very system that united the world also nearly destroyed it. So, what do you think? Was this the price of progress? Can an empire that spread both innovation and catastrophe still be called a connector of civilizations? When Genghis Khan died in 1227, the world didn't suddenly become peaceful. It evolved. His successors divided the empire into 4 great khanates: the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde in Eastern Europe. Each developed its own identity, blending Mongol rule with local customs, religions, and ideas. In China, Kublai Khan, Genghis's grandson, established the Yuan dynasty and moved the capital to what is now Beijing. He encouraged science, trade, and cultural exchange. He invited foreign scholars and diplomats, employed Chinese administrators, and even built roads, canals, and postal stations across his empire. Under his rule, China became more connected to the outside world than ever before. In Persia, the Mongols who once burned cities ended up rebuilding them. They adopted Islam, revived agriculture, and sponsored art and learning. Cities like Tabriz and Samarkand became centers of science, philosophy, and architecture. The Mongols there weren't destroyers anymore. They became patrons of culture. Even in Eastern Europe, the Mongols left a mark. Their invasions reshaped political boundaries and military strategies. Russian princes learned to centralize power under Mongol oversight, a legacy that would eventually influence the rise of Moscow and the Tsardom. So how do we define them now? As the villains who spread terror and death, or as the empire that unintentionally sparked a new age of global awareness? They killed millions, yes, but they also built a world where trade, technology, and culture moved faster than ever before. Their postal system, the Yam, stretched across continents, linking China with the Mediterranean long before telegraphs or trains. They were brutal, but they were efficient, ruthless yet visionary. It's a contradiction that still puzzles historians. Can the same empire that destroyed Baghdad's House of Wisdom also be credited for bridging civilizations? Without the Mongols, would the Renaissance, the Age of Exploration, or even modern globalization have happened the same way?